Good morning, dear friends. Welcome to KU Padashala. I am Kaikasi VS, Assistant Professor of English, University College Trivandrum. And in a three-part lecture series, I will be introducing to you the concept of Indian aesthetics with special reference to Rasa. This is part of your BA English program, and as we all know, the study of literary criticism is not complete without touching upon the concept of Indian aesthetics and especially the concept of Rasa. Now, before we begin, let me ask you a few questions. Why do you get so involved when you are reading a book? Why are you so engrossed in a musical composition? Why do you stare for long hours at a painting or a sculpture? Now, we know that this is because of the transformative power of art. We have been hearing about the concept of transformative power of art right from our young days, right? You responded to music. As a child, you must have responded to lullabies. As a child, you must have responded to nursery rhymes. You must have listened to action songs. And you grew up listening to a lot of things. You grew up watching a lot of movies, a drama, and of course something which is very vital to all of us, reading. The simple answer for all this is the transformative power of art. Now, art is the expression of a man's feelings and imaginations through a medium. It can be a painting, it can be a poem or a dance form. And the subject which actually analyzes what happens to you when you are engaged in the process of watching a performance or reading is called aesthetics. What happens to you? I told you about the transformative power of art. It can be for a short while, it can be for a longer duration. Sometimes you are moved by a scene in a movie, sometimes you are moved by an entire movie. So, it depends upon the kind of thing that you are watching and the experience that you are going through. But you cannot deny the fact that art has got a transformative power. And that's one of the reasons why the entire history of human civilization has invested a lot of time and patience in theorizing the concept of art. Now, you must have all watched the famous character of Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society, where he actually tells, I love poetry because I belong to the human race, and human race is characterized by intense passion. We need medicine, we need banking and all for our survival, but we stay alive because of poetry, beauty, romance, love and so on. So, why do we read? The answer lies in the very simple fact that we read because we want to live. So, in order to understand all this, we have devised a concept called aesthetics. Now, let us look at the etymology or the beginning of the term aesthetics. Now, aesthetics is a term which originated in Greece. Now, the meaning of the term is sense perception. And it is believed that in the year 1735, a gentleman called Alexander Baumgarten was a German philosopher who theorized and gave us the concept of aesthetics or the study of beauty for the first time. And he actually meant this to be the science of cognitive perception. You watch something and a transformative thing happens within you, and he theorized it in the form of aesthetics. Now, theorizing beauty is not as simple as it seems. It's not a concrete concept, it is abstract. And when we define abstract things, the concepts that we use to define that also has to be problematic. It varies. But even with a lot of philosophers and theoreticians trying to define the concept of beauty, they have somehow reached a common consensus. A common uniform notion has been reached as of now, and that is what we go by the umbrella term aesthetics. So, aesthetics is that discipline in which authors, artists or philosophers try to explain the concept of beauty. So, how you theorize beauty? Now we come on to the concept of Indian aesthetics. Now, when we talk about aesthetics, there is always this division called the Western aesthetics and Indian aesthetics. We all know that Indian aesthetics predates Western aesthetics. That is, we had philosophers and theoreticians in India long before even Western aestheticians even thought of having a concept of beauty. We had theoreticians philosophizing the concept of beauty, and that too in a very systematic way, in a very comprehensive way, with lot of examples and lot of treatises. So that is one of the reasons why Western philosophy is always indebted to the concept of Indian aesthetics. Now, what is Indian aesthetics? Indian aesthetics is a unique philosophical, you must remember the concept that it is philosophical and spiritual point of view on art, architecture and literature. In short, it covers everything that goes by soft skills, or what you can call it as the soft forms of literary appreciation. It can be a poem, it can be a dance form and so on. That is one of the reasons why we know that when dance forms originated in India, it has got a strong foundation, and this strong foundation is the foundation of Indian aesthetics. Now, there were many philosophers and theoreticians in India who tried to analyze or ask the question, what is the soul of poetry? കവിതയുടെ ആത്മാവ് എവിടെയാണ് എന്നുള്ള ചോദ്യം ചോദിച്ചിരുന്ന ഒരു പറ്റം ഇന്ത്യൻ ഫിലോസഫേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. So in India, at one point of time, there lived a group of philosophers who tried to unravel the question and give an answer to the problem of what is the soul of poetry, or where is the soul of poetry. And they reached a consensus that, or they reached a kind of a solution that you cannot define the soul of poetry in a single way. You need to have different methods and different approaches to reach this question. So we have in India different schools of poetry which actually try to formulate what is the soul of poetry. So we have in India 8 schools of poetry which defines the concept of beauty, and based on that they try to talk about the soul of poetry. So we have the Rasa school, we have the Alankara school, we have the Guna school, we have the Ridi school, we have the Dhwani school, Vakroti, Auchitya and Anumana. And each of these schools are related to, or these schools are linked to, or they are known by the person who was giving this concept, or the person who was propounding this concept. So you have Rasa school by Bharata, Alankara school by Bhamaka, Guna school by Acharya Dandin. These are all Kashmiri theoreticians. Riti school by Vamana, Dhwani school of Anandavardhana, Vakroti school of Kundaka, Auchitya school of Shemendra, and finally Anumana school of Mahimabhatta. So we have 8 schools of poetry which was actually trying to talk about what is the soul of poetry. So when we have these schools, you naturally will be wondering, what were they teaching? They were actually trying to teach beauty. Now, as I told you, this beauty is not the kind of beauty that we equate with physical beauty. You can't say that she is beautiful, he is beautiful, or he is handsome. It's not something related to that. This beauty is that innate tendency of human beings to respond to everything in nature accordingly. For instance, you see a mountain, you see a forest. It's an innate tendency that we have in every human being to respond to it in a very positive way. Or you see rain, the emotion that is associated with that is universal. So that is the beauty of things that you find in nature. Even in human beings we have this beauty, but it is not something that you associate with the physical concept of beauty, that physical yardsticks of beauty that you see around, which is basically created by media. So there is always this misconception that beauty is something which cannot be theorized. So that is what was refuted by Indian theoreticians. They said it can be defined. Just imagine, just like you have a postgraduate degree in science or mathematics, you can actually have a degree in beauty in India way back. So that is the premise on which Indian aesthetics is built upon. So we have among these 8 schools, 4 schools became prominent. You have the Resa school, which actually explicated the concept of emotive experience. You have Dhwani school, which was talking about the suggestive sense of words. You have Vakroti, which was talking about the style in general. And finally, we have Alangara, which was actually talking about the figurative sense of expressions, speech and so on. So, these are actually the foundation on which the concept of Indian aesthetics was built upon. Now, Indian aesthetics did not become as widely popular as Western aesthetics for various reasons. As we know that all these treatises were written in Sanskrit, the language which was once considered to be divine, and as a result it was inaccessible to the common man, and as a result many people did not understand what was written in these texts, and naturally in the passage of time you find that only those elitist, scholarly class could get access to these things, and maybe because of that the popularity of these texts got a bit dwindled at that time, and later on we have this being revived. That is why you find interfaces between Western aesthetics and Indian aesthetics, and we study a comparative study of these things in universities right now. That is one of the reasons why you are studying what is the comparative study of, or how can you compare one theory that we find in Indian aesthetics to that of Western aesthetics. So, the interface actually happened at a time when we started to find parallels between the theories that were formulated. You find that many Western scholars and theoreticians, they were inspired by the Indian text, and they have publicly acknowledged it in their concerned works. So, that is one of the reasons why we find comparative study of these theories that you find in the East and the West. At one time this was not possible because many people did not have access to Sanskrit as a language. Now, we have translations of all this. All leading languages have translated the concept of, especially the concept of Rasa, and it has now become a universal kind of a thing. So, there is nothing called only one kind or one class of people do not have access to this. This has become accessible to everyone. Now, one of the key terms or one of the key concepts that you have to understand about Indian aesthetics is that this is built on a very simple premise. It actually tells you that in literature you do not have things spoken directly. That is, for instance, if you look at a girl and say that you are beautiful, that will be too plain, that will be too it is such a blunt kind of a statement according to Indian aestheticians. Instead of that, you can actually guise that sentence in different formats. You can actually embellish that sentence in different formats, and in simple words this is called suggestion, and that is one of the reasons why suggestive sense of the words is given more importance in Indian aesthetics than the verbal expression of the word. So, when I say I am beautiful, it is just a verbal expression of my emotions to another girl or another person, but when I disguise it and say that you are as beautiful as a flower, there is a comparison there, or you can say that you are a flower. Later on we equate these things with simile and metaphor and other figures of speech in English language and literature. I am not talking about that. So, the soul of Indian aesthetics lies in the fact that it is suggestions that matter. Later on we have the term Vyanjana, which stands for the suggestive sense of the term and so on. So, we are not going into that. So, you have in Indian aesthetics the concept of suggestions. Now, I will give you some examples to drive home this point. We have all read a novel like Robinson Crusoe. So, what is Robinson Crusoe? Robinson Crusoe is actually about a man in search of adventure, getting lost, all kinds of things happen in the island. He meets the man Friday and so on. No, it is not. It is a very suggestive novel which actually talks about the existence or the lonely existence of a man in the universe. Or look at a novel like Don Quixote by Cervantes. It's actually about adventure. Again, you have a knight in pursuit of adventure. No, it's not. It's actually a suggestive novel which actually is making fun, or you can call it as a mock epic which is actually making fun of all those chivalric romances which was written during that time. So, it's not direct, it is indirect. Or who could have thought that there was, take a novel like Moby Dick. Who would have ever imagined that there will be poetry in whales and philosophy in blubber. It's a philosophical novel. It's not just a novel that deals with the adventure of a group of individuals who seeks out for that. Or one of my favorite novels, Midnight Children, where you find there is this extremely important scene where one character looks at the doctor looks at the patient to a perforated sheet, and later on, because the girl is very embarrassed to actually show her body to the young doctor, and later on we find that the doctor has got a clear idea of what is the body of this girl like, because he has been looking through the perforated sheet for a while. Again, it is a suggestive reference to the, or what you can call it as a metaphorical reference to the concept of India itself. That is how novelists or writers connect everything. It is through suggestions. So, in literature goes by suggestion. It is not a direct expression of your free will that happens when a writer is writing. That is one of the reasons why we fall for books. That is one of the reasons why we fall for books that takes you to different lands and different cultures and different state of mind, different emotions and so on. That is basically because we cannot live in a world where there is only one emotion. We need to understand what are the multiple emotions that we have around. So, a book actually takes you by their hand and drags you to all these kind of situations. This is made possible through suggestions. This is made possible through these kind of figures of speech, which actually constitutes the again the foundation of Indian aesthetics. Now, every student of literature, when they are introduced to the concept of literary theory, they are so shocked to find that they have been reading books all the while, they have been enjoying books all the while, and suddenly what is the reason or what is the need for having a theory to understand literature? Now, Indian aesthetics has answers for all that. It tells you that you actually don't need a literary theory to understand literature, but it makes, if you have a background knowledge of theory, you will be able to understand and enjoy works of literature in a more comprehensive manner. That is one of the reasons why they say that every literary theory should have a practical application to it. You study theory in isolation and you go to the exam hall, you might get very good marks, but you may not be able to link life to learn, and that therefore, after your exam you will just forget the whole thing. So, Indian aesthetics is also something like that. You have to understand that you actually don't need theory to enjoy literature, but to understand the nuances of literature you need to have theory, and that is the place where suggestive concept of words or suggestive power of words come into play. So, Indian theories or Western theories, no matter what you are applying or no matter what you are reading to understand a text, you should have a practical application to that, and that is where suggestiveness come into play, and hence the theory of giving a kind of a framework for all this plus beauty starts with a text. It begins with a text. It begins with that text which is of very, very importance to all of us, and that text is none other than Natya Shastra written by Bharata. So, we must have heard of this expression that the whole of Indian aesthetic tradition begins with Bharata's Natya Shastra and ends with Jagannatha's Rasa Gangadhara. And what you find in this text is very interesting, because it, for the first time, Natya Shastra was the first text, for the first time it gave a conceptual framework to what we have been discussing as beauty. So, whatever comes under beauty, whatever comes under the aesthetic enjoyment of literature, especially with regard to poetry, was given a framework which was actually given a theoretical framework in the text which goes by the name Natya Shastra. So, that was the first part of our lecture series on Indian aesthetics with special reference to the concept of rasa. In the coming videos, we will be discussing the concept of rasa in detail. in the next two videos, we will be talking about the concept of rasa, which is the foundation stone of again Indian aesthetics.